Hey there. Thanks for joining us for Tales of Misadventure, a podcast all about business blunders. On this podcast, Nicole Donnelly, founder of DMG Digital, talks to entrepreneurs and learns how they turn their lemons into lemonade. DMG Digital is a content marketing agency focused on helping manufacturers attract new buyers through digital self-serve. Nicole Donnelly is a fourth-generation entrepreneur, a girl mom, and an avid traveler. Now, let's head into a tale of misadventure with your host, Nicole Donnelly.
Hello, and welcome to Tales of Misadventure, where amazing entrepreneurs share their stories of failure and how they turned lemons into lemonade. Today, I have the incredible honor and privilege of hosting Marcus Sheridan. Marcus is a highly accomplished husband, father, entrepreneur, influential speaker, and best-selling author. Oh my gosh, look at all this in the realm of sales and digital marketing. Marcus gained widespread recognition for his remarkable journey as a business owner of river pools and spas, where he defied the odds and turned his struggling business around using a simple yet powerful methodology he developed based on inbound marketing. With his groundbreaking book, They Ask, You Answer, Marcus has inspired numerous businesses to harness the power of content marketing and embrace a customer-first approach. They Ask, You Answer strategies have been shown time and time again to drive revenue growth for companies around the world. My goodness, Marcus Sheridan, my fellow Virginian, my fellow marketer, my fellow Christian, this is such an incredible honor. I am so happy to have you here. How are you doing today?
I am thrilled to be here as well, Nicole. So I mean, you clearly have a low bar of excitement, and so I am really, really happy to talk. And you've got such a good vibe and such a good energy about you that it's an honor to be here on your show with you.
Thank you. Well, before I kick off the show, I just have to thank you because I'll never forget the first time I heard you speak. It was years ago, and I think it was an inbound. And I was a marketing manager at the time for an industrial manufacturing company. And I remember coming to you to your session, and the session was just, there was so many, I'd never heard of you before. There was just, it was a full house. And I'll never forget the words you said on stage. You're just such a great speaker. You said transparency builds trust. And I remember it just resonated so much with me. And I took a lot of the principles I heard from that talk and from your book to the company that I was working for. And it was just amazing the transformation that business had. We saw a fourfold increase in profit.
Wow.
And I was so inspired by the results that we got that inspired me to start my own agency. And man, if you would have told me 5 years ago, I would be sitting having this conversation with you, I think I might have pooped my pants. I don't think I would have believed that it would happen. So this is like, so grateful. Like I have part of this amazing team now who is just so committed to helping our clients be successful, and just so grateful for you and what you've done and for you using your God-given talents. It's just really just been such a blessing to me personally and professionally. And so thank you. Thank you so much.
Well, I appreciate that. You know, there's something about inbound. It's funny how many people have said to me, I saw you at Inbound and it changed my path, my journey, my career. And some of those people work for me today. It's just been like this really, I think because, HubSpot, and not as much anymore, but they've always had an electricity to their events. And I feel like that's the place where marketers especially go and they just let loose and they just say, you know what, I'm going to feel the feels. And so for me as a speaker, I get to just send it fully and, not have to hedge at all. Right. And the audience in those moments at that event, I always know they want me to win, right? They're looking for me to have provide them with a great experience. They're not looking to doubt or to naysay. And, that makes a huge difference. It really does. You can give what's the crazy thing about, speaking for the last 12 years around the world is you can literally give the exact same talk to 10 different groups and have 10 very, very different responses.
Mm.
It's just very fascinating how that works, right? And it's so much is about the energy of the room before you get there and the culture of the group before you get there. And, and then there's all these just nuances and wow. Anyway, I digress, but I'm happy to be here.
I'm so happy to have you. Man, that is so cool. You're such a great speaker, but I could see that. Like you really do, I would imagine. I have very little experience. My experience with public speaking is this, and then church talks, right? So like I can
Yeah.
only imagine how.
Well, I
You do.
actually had a huge fear of speaking when I was
Mm.
younger, and when I was 17, that's really when I got involved in my church. I wasn't. I actually I grew up in a different church, and then when I was 17, um, I I became LDS. And what was interesting is in the LDS church, there's not set clergy, and so the members, right, they give talks. And one time I was sitting there. This is shortly after I joined the church, and I was like, it was the day, it's called testimony, where all the members can get up and they just share their thoughts, about life and God and stuff like that. And I remember sitting there thinking, I want to get up and say something. I was like, no, you can't do that, Marcus. You're afraid. You're afraid of public speaking. This is not who you are. And then like before I knew it, I was like literally walking up to the front of the audience, and I spoke.
Wow.
And it was in that moment, like when I was done, I was like, wow, that wasn't so
Mm.
bad. And then I was a missionary in Chile for a couple of years. And by the time I was done with that, like by the end, I'm like, I'm supposed to speak. This is what I'm supposed to do with my life. And, but I needed a story, right? I didn't know I needed a story, but that's really how it works. And so I became a pool guy by accident, right? And then today people around the world come up to me and say, you're that pool guy, right? Which is pretty cool because I remember, Nicole, that when I was when I just joined my two business partners at River Pools, which was
Mhm.
2001, right out of college. I was at some event or whatever, and a family member came up to me and said, "Hey, Marcus, I heard you're going to be a pool guy." And I said, "Yeah." And they said, "What a waste." And I thought to myself, "You, what, like, you have no idea what." And it was
Oh,
just like I
yeah.
was so bothered by that, right?
Yeah.
And because their definition of success was so worldly and
Mm.
just clearly off. I've realized, and sorry to digress, Nicole, but
No, this is great.
that's just kind of, I've realized that there's such a big difference between success and fulfillment, right? Success is generally defined by the world and others. They say, "Oh, he's successful." They don't really know. She's so successful. You don't know if they're really happy, fulfilled,
Yeah.
like living their best life. But fulfillment is something very internal. It's not externally driven. It's like it's what
Mhm.
we are able to, receive. And the profession itself, I believe, or the industry, is very, very overrated to our happiness, right? I
Mhm.
didn't grow up saying I want to be a pool guy. I ended up becoming one, but ultimately, what I am is a person that loves to to teach and to grow things. And I was able to do that with my swimming pool company. I've been able to do that with other companies since that time. And I think we have to have that. It's important to understand and teach, especially our youth, that it don't focus so much on, hey, I'm going to be a doctor, or I'm going to be a scientist, or I'm going to be a this or that. It's like really learning how to be in love with your the action that you take each day, and going beyond the
Mhm.
title of the job or the title of the industry, and saying, really, what am I doing here, right? And so that was something I'll never forget.
I love that. It reminds me of my favorite word right now, which is eudaimonia. Have you heard this word,
No,
eudaimonia?
that's a Google right there.
Oh, it's a beautiful word. So it basically means it's ancient, comes from Greek times. And Aristotle and Plato and Socrates they would wax poetic about what is eudaimonia, right? And translated, it's a state of well-being and fulfillment that arises from living a virtuous and meaningful life.
Oh, wow.
And I think everything you
Yeah.
just said, I think
That
is
sums it up.
exactly that, like it's not about the destination. It's about enjoying the process of being, but that process of being is about more than seeking pleasure. It's about, really striving to live that virtuous life. And I think that's one of the things I've really admired about you. I see that like you are like truly looking to serve in the best capacity that you can and do that. So that's pretty cool. Eudaimonia.
Yeah. Well, I do. Yeah, I love that. And speaking of, I think we all serve and give back in different ways. And I've got a book coming out
Mm.
next year, and it's on a very different topic than They Ask You Answer, actually, which is on how to have transformative conversations and ask life-changing questions, specifically in the workplace. And something I'm really passionate about. I'm passionate about communication and teaching all things communication. I have a coaching company. My agency is really is a coaching company,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm always working with all of our coaches to be the best communicators they can be, because really I want them to to change lives with the words. And if we say things the right way, we can do that. I mean, we really can. It's sad that we don't work on that as much as we could. It's just take for example most sales teams. If you ask them, are you good at asking questions? They say, yeah, I'm pretty good at asking questions. And then if you test them on their ability to ask questions, they fall very, very short most of the time, right? If you talk to most managers and you say to them, have you ever had really intensive training on how to give a world-class one-on-one with a team member? Over 90% will say, actually, I've never had really any training specific on that. Think about it. And it all goes back to the way we say things, the way we communicate, the way we ask questions. And can we learn to ask the perfect question every single time to have a breakthrough with that person in that moment? I think we can. And I think there's patterns that can be followed, and we can all become truly great with that. So yeah, I'm on that journey right now. It's actually going to be a business fable book, kind of like Five
Oh,
Dysfunctions of a Team.
yes. I was just going to say Pat Lencioni. That's a
Yeah,
great
yeah,
book. Love it.
yeah. So I'm pretty excited about that, Nicole. We're going to see. It's a big challenge to write
Oh,
a hybrid fictional nonfiction book.
yeah. Well, you can do it because you're quite the storyteller. I mean, and they ask you answer. You're so great at just really hooking people right away. So I'm sure it's going to be great. Do you have the title of it yet?
Yeah. Well, I have the two premises. Okay,
Yeah.
so the title is it's probably going to be called the Pathfinder.
Very
Now, what is
nice.
a Pathfinder? A Pathfinder originally, historically, were the individuals that went ahead of the major explorations so as to
Mm,
find alternative routes that these explorers could use so as to find new frontiers, right?
mm,
And so if you're a Pathfinder or Pathfinder leadership, if you're trying to become a Pathfinder as a leader, as a manager, as a parent, you understand that it's not your job to, in most cases, let's say, give the answer or tell your team or tell your child or tell your loved one what to do. Rather, it's our job to help them discover the answer for themselves. But to do that, you've got to fire up new pathways in terms of the way they think. And then they can see it, they can find it, they can discover it, and it becomes very, very exciting, and it becomes quite life-changing. Can I give you an example of a story
yeah, please.
that's really crystallizes this? And this is it's actually the beginning of the book, but I think you'll appreciate this, and this will test your skills. Okay, Nicole. So we're going to put you on a
Uh-oh.
test right now.
Oh
And
no.
if you're listening to this audience, if you're listening to this, you can also you can. I want you to approach this like, what would I have done? So I want you to
Okay.
imagine this. I've just given a talk, a keynote at an event in Texas, and I've been speaking about marketing and whatnot. And I was near the stage. I was packing up because I had to hurry up and get to a flight because I was running behind, and I just almost had no time. So I really had to go, and I had an Uber waiting for me outside. So I was
Okay.
getting ready to run to this Uber, and I see this gentleman walking up to me, and he has a look of concern on his face, and I can tell that he's afraid, he's scared. And he comes up to me and he says, Marcus, can I ask you a question? And I could tell he was very earnest in his intentions right now. This is something he'd been thinking about. And I said, sure. Now, what I'm about to say may sound at first almost like I'm being funny, but this is actually a very serious thing that he said. So it's not meant to be funny when you hear it.
Is this a true story? This is a true story.
100%. This is a true story.
Oh, okay.
So he says to me, he says, Marcus, I'm not really sure how to say this, but my wife, she bites her nails incessantly, and it's driving me crazy. I don't want it to drive me crazy. We've talked about it. She knows that it bothers me, but it's just getting worse. I'm at wit's end. I don't know what to do. What should I do? Okay. So this is what he says to me. And he's literally like, you can tell he's just so overwhelmed with this problem.
Yeah.
Now, we literally have to leave in less than 60 seconds. At the same time, the dilemma is, can we potentially help this man? Can we maybe save his marriage? Now, when I've presented that scenario, and I'm going to finish the story here in a second, Nicole. When I've presented that scenario to even like coaches before that are supposed to be great at asking questions, oftentimes when I say, what do? They'll say, tell them that you don't tell the man that you can't get into it right now, but that you can discuss it at another time. That's the number one response in terms of like when I talk to coaches. Now, my response to that is always the same. But if you could change their life in 60 seconds, would you want to know how to do it? And of course, the answer is, well, yeah, I'd want to know. I'd want to be able to do that, but I just don't know if it's possible right now to fix this guy's problem in 60 seconds. And so, but if we could, would we want to? Yes, we'd want to. Okay. So let's see if we can do that. So now you've got one question here, Nicole, that you can ask. One question. You might have time for two. What question would you ask this man, knowing what he's already said?
Oof. Man, what question would I ask?
And by the way, this is very, nobody has ever really gotten the answer to this.
Yeah. What question
Somebody
would I
will
ask?
eventually. All right. But you could be the first person.
Yeah. I don't know.
So there's no pressure at all.
Yeah. I mean, I would probably ask him, well, what's going on in her life that's causing her to want to bite her nails?
All right. So that's not a bad question because it's going to help him reflect a little bit.
Yeah.
All right. Now, what he's going to answer, though, he's going to say, I mean, I don't know. We talked about it. And she just says, I just can't help myself. So that question, although could be somewhat reflective, because of the state that he's in, he's immediately gonna get worked up like, hey, we've talked about that.
Yep.
The other question people oftentimes will say that you should probably ask is, well, do you love your wife? Now, let's think about that. Would he have come up to me in the way that he did if he didn't truly love his wife?
Yep. Exactly. Yep.
We know he loves his wife. Yes. And so if we ask him, do you love your wife? What is he going to feel? Frustration.
Yep.
That's it. Frustration. The key to asking questions in a way that people engage, and I'm talking about when you're, not necessarily in a podcast per se, right? Because you don't need help with that. I'm talking about just in life in general, but especially as a leader, as a manager, is you got to feel two things as the receiver. You got to feel there's a purpose to the question. You got to feel like you're making progress. Purpose and progress, the two P's. All right. If you feel that as the receiver, you don't get frustrated with the one that's asking. Because sometimes when people are being taught to ask questions, like, I think they're going to get frustrated with that. No, they're going to get frustrated with a bad question because they're not going to feel progress or purpose. Okay?
Yeah.
So what was the question that I asked this fellow? The question that I asked this fellow, and usually, by the way, I'll ask this to a group of people, and I'll hear 15 different questions. And most of the questions would have led to the gentleman getting frustrated and not essentially living in the solution. Okay? The question I asked him was, has there ever been a time in your marriage when your wife wasn't biting her nails?
Mm.
Now, as soon as I asked that, you can start to see why we ask that question, right, Nicole? Because it forces a clarity of answer, right? And this is what he said. He looked up and he said, come to think of it. Now, by the way, that, what I just described, looked up, says, come to think of it, or anything like that. That's what you call a light bulb moment. The great leaders, great communicators, they induce light bulb moments with those that they communicate with, right? Their audience, their friends, their peers, their families, their coworkers, etc. So he says, now that you mention it, we actually were separated for a period of time. We got back together. And for the first 6 months of getting back together, I don't think she was biting her nails.
Fascinating. Wow.
Now we're cooking with gas. Now I've got to leave in 20 seconds. Okay. I've got to leave in 20 seconds. So we've got time for one more question because we've asked one. All right. It was the right one. So now we've got one more question to ask. Now, what would you follow up with? Now you're starting to see the path, right, Nicole? Like there's the path there, right? And so he's just said, come to think of it, after we were separated for the first 6 months, she wasn't biting her nails. Okay. So he's having that light bulb moment. He's discovering new paths. Now my job is to ask another question, not to tell him what he needs to do, but to ask another question. And so what would you ask now?
Oh, man. I think I'd probably ask what changed.
Good. So the question that I asked...
I got it. Yes.
Yes. The question I asked was, what were you doing then that you're not doing today? And he looked at me. Tears rolled down his cheeks. He nodded, and he walked away.
Wow. My gosh. That's amazing.
And I ran
what's great about that is that it was his responsibility. Like it was you challenged him to take responsibility.
That's the power of self-discovery. If I tell him, especially from the beginning, you're clearly doing something wrong with the marriage, and that's why she's biting her nails.
Yeah.
It's just so fascinating, though, because the way that most people approach that, they'll say things like, well, have you looked at alternatives? Have you tried any therapies? Have you, it's like they say all these things, and all they're going to do is get the person flustered. They're not really thinking in the solution, right? And so we asked two questions. He has this unbelievable moment of self-discovery, of realization. I run to the Uber and I make my flight. But as I was driving away in that moment, what I was thinking was a couple things, okay? And this is me just being a very self-aware person. First question I asked myself was, why did he ask you that? Why? You're talking about a subject that has nothing to do with marriage. Yeah. Why did he ask you that? So that was the first thing. And then the second thing I thought to myself was, how did you know to ask that question?
Especially in that short time frame.
Right. Right. How did you know?
While you're rushing.
How did you know? And when I have those conversations with myself, that's when I know that I need to teach that thing to the world. Right?
Interesting. That's when you know that's what you need to teach, learn, whatever. Yep. Very cool.
100%. And so, I said, okay, there's got to be a framework to this. So just like the Ask You Answer was a framework, but the Ask You Answer started for me where I was just sitting there saying, okay, I'm reading all this stuff about inbound marketing, and people are asking what all they're essentially saying, these technical words, is you just need to obsessively listen to your potential customers and
Mm-hmm.
address their questions, worries, fears, issues, concerns. I said, well, shoot, I can do that. And I didn't overthink it, right? And then I started to produce the content, and then I started to see the patterns.
Yep.
And from that, you really, from the patterns, now you have the frameworks, right? You have the frameworks like you find in the book of the Big Five and assignment
Yeah.
selling and all these
Mm-hmm.
other things that, in the moment I was just doing them intuitively. And so it's been really an amazing journey. But if you look at the commonality, it's really communication is like at the core
Mm-hmm.
of like who I am. And so I ultimately help people to transform the way they communicate and to be a transformative communicator, right? Sometimes that's called marketing. Sometimes that's called sales training. Sometimes that's called leadership development.
Yeah.
It's all the same. It's all the same thing though. But I didn't know that like even 5 years ago.
Yeah.
It's like you live the thing and then you look back and suddenly you're like, oh, there's a pattern there. Like that's that's really what's going on here. It's that whole build it and they will come. It's like you can't see where the trail is headed until you start walking the trail, and then you're like, oh, that's really where this is all. But that's why we've got to be in motion, and that's why we've got to create art and whatever that
Yes.
art is for each one of us, and then we start to figure out, oh, that's actually what I believe. That's what I'm doing. That's how that works.
I love that. I've seen this pattern with you that I think is really cool from the time you first started at River Pools. You talk about how you just learned. So when you first started working there, as you were the manager of the store, and I remember in your book you said, I did what I always did. I learned, and you learned
Yeah.
everything you could about the product, and you were quizzing and testing the other the owners
Yeah.
at the time. And then within 6 months, they asked you to be a business partner, which, as a business owner, to ask someone you've known for 6 months to have equity in your company, that is a massive decision. Like
Yeah.
you really proved yourself. And then you learned, and then you did the same thing when you came up with the framework for they ask you answer. You just went all in and you just learned, and then you identified the patterns. And then I think with this new communication, I feel like you've probably, through all of the work you've done with clients,
Yeah.
you've had to ask a lot of questions.
Yep.
And I've been there in meetings with clients where you're trying to explain to them why they need to, why they need to have pricing on their website. And it's a battle, and figuring out how to get them to change the mind shift is one of my biggest challenges. And I'm sure you figured that out. So this questioning that you've had so much experience doing, it's like it's kind of coming for full circle. You've been having to learn to ask your clients, your employees, all these questions, and now it's like you've had the experience that you're there now.
Well, it's funny you mentioned the pricing thing, right? I think if I could attribute in many ways my speaking career to one element of my let's say keynote or a bit that I have, it's this subject of pricing. People have brought, companies, orgs have brought me in all over the world just to teach them how to talk about pricing or help their dealers overcome this pricing issue. And it takes me 12 minutes to teach a company how to talk about cost and price on their website. I've tried to do it in less than 12 minutes. It doesn't really work. And it is done through a series of questions that takes an audience on a journey where they are reflecting the whole time. They're like, son of a gun, son of a gun, son of a gun. So just to break down the psychology of this, because this is like a marketing thing, and it'll be fun for a second, because let's break this down, just like this, the whole science of how this works, Nicole. So if I want to help an audience understand the importance of talking about cost and price on the website, what I'm not going to do is I'm not going to say, hey, everybody, we really should be talking about cost and price on the website. Okay? I'm not going to do that. Okay. So I have to create new paths for them. Right.
Yep.
So the way that I'm going to do that is, and I'm just going to give you a really rapid fire here of like what the bit sounds like. I know you've seen it before, but here's the psychology. I'm going to say, so by a show of hands, how many of you have researched how much something costs over the last year? And everybody's going to raise their hand. And I'm going to say, and so when you're on a website and you're looking for cost and price and you cannot find it, what's the emotion you experience? It's a very intentional question, by the way. And they're all going to say frustration. I'm going to say, that's right, frustration. I'm going to point to someone and say, what gives you the right in that moment to feel frustrated? And they're going to say, well, I'm the buyer, I'm the customer. I'm like, yeah. And in that moment of frustration, do you as the buyer, do you say to yourself, well, it's got to be on this website somewhere. I'm just going to keep on looking until I find it. And they laugh and they say, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm like, yeah, you're not going to do that. And then I'm going to say, okay, so in that moment of frustration, do you as the buyer, do you as the searcher, do you say to yourself, well, of course they're not talking about cost and price. They're a value-based service business. I'm going to call them on the phone instead. And they're going to laugh. They're going to say, no. And I'm going to say, so instead of calling them on the phone or instead of digging further, you as the buyer, you as the searcher, you keep doing what? And they're going to say, I keep searching. And I'm going to say, you search until what happens? And they're going to say, I search until I find what I'm looking for. And I'm going to say, and generally speaking, whoever gives you what you're looking for, they're going to get what? And they're going to say, my business. Now, that's the first few minutes. And we did that really, really fast, right? Did you notice how many questions are in there, though?
Oh, so
it's not done I'm not interrogating.
No, yeah.
We're just having this really fun conversation about our own behavior as humans.
Exactly.
So, but as we're doing that, what I'm setting up is they will argue with me, but they're not going to argue with themselves. And so if they say, I don't do that, I don't do that, I don't do that, I'm literally setting the audience up. So later on, they can't argue and say, well, our customers are value-based, because they've already said, that's not what they say. That's not what they do. So if somebody will say this on a personal level, well, now you have got in front of that doubt or that concern. Now, in this new book, we call that vanguarding, and this is the process of knowing what could go wrong. Yeah. What are the mental exit doors in someone's mind, identifying them before they even know what they are, and then finding ways to eliminate those mental exit doors of the mind. So a vanguard, actually, historically, it was the front of the Roman army that went into battle first. And when they went into battle, they formed a V. And so they were the vanguard, but they went in to solve the problem first, essentially. So I called this vanguarding because there wasn't a better, the only phrase in society is get in front of the issue, right? Get in front of it. Well, it's really fun once somebody really learns vanguarding and has that shared language. Like at my company and at the companies that I work with and teach, we're constantly talking about, okay, so what was the vanguard that was missed? Because every breakdown in communication starts with a missed vanguard. Whether it's sales, whether it's an important one-on-one, whether it's a meeting, you're always missing a vanguard or more than one vanguard. Every bad client relationship generally starts with missed some vanguards. The reason why you have disclaimers in your contract, right? Those are vanguards, right? So that we don't want that problem to manifest itself. So we're trying to get in front of it. Yeah. Ultimately, the greatest way in life to resolve a concern is to address it before it becomes a concern. And so that's why vanguarding is such a big deal. And let me just give you one other example of just vanguarding in general. And this has to do with asking questions, because if you just go into someone asking questions, you're probably going to be off track, right? So let me do this on a spousal level or partner level for a second, okay?
Yeah.
So, your loved one comes to you, they've had a bad day. Well, they need to unload. Now, oftentimes if you ask someone, so they come into you, they have a problem, they need to unload, they'll say, okay, well, what I would do in that case, and a lot of people believe this is the right answer, is I'm going to say to them, would you just like me to listen right now, or would you like me to offer you some solutions? That's actually the wrong question, because at first, everybody just wants you to listen. So you don't need to ask that question. Just shut up and listen and really, really lean in to what they're saying. Give your energy to them right now. Give your full self, full focus to them. And so once they feel completely heard, then they're going to say, what do you think? What do you think?
Yep.
Now, here's the vanguard. Here's a vanguard. And this vanguard is something that you might use anytime, let's say a team member comes to you with an issue. Because oftentimes when a team member comes to you with an issue, especially as a leader, as a manager, you've heard that problem many times before. You know the answer. And inherently, most leaders, most managers immediately give the answer because they feel in their mind it's efficient. And the other reason subconsciously is we want to be the hero of the moment.
Yes.
We do this with our kids too. Our kids ask
Yep.
us a question and we quickly answer because we want to be the hero to our kids. We don't even realize this, but what do we create in that moment? We create dependency. We create this idea that they need us, their hero. And many of us want to feel very, very needed.
Yes.
But those that are the Pathfinders, the transformative communicators, they want their audience to always be the hero. Always.
Yeah.
And so let's say the partner comes and unloads and they say, what do you think? I'm going to say, I don't know, but I think we can probably figure this out. Can I ask you some questions? And we lean into it together. And now the person will have to say something like, yeah, I want to know. Let's figure this out. They've now given you permission to lead, to ask questions. Unless you've been given permission to ask those questions, you're going to be, in most cases, met with resistance. So let's say your team member comes to you with an issue, and you've solved that problem a million times. But again, you don't want to just give the answer because, that doesn't develop them whatsoever. They come to you and they say, what do you think I should do? All right, let's talk about that. I think I could probably help you, but in order to help you here, in order for us to figure out this answer, I'm going to need to ask you some questions, and you really need to lean in and really give yourself to the answers. Person says, yeah, I can do that. And now you start asking the right questions. And then suddenly you're inducing light bulb moments. And then if you're really great, by the end, they say, I've got it. I know exactly what I should do, Nicole. And you say, what do you think you should do, Marcus? And Marcus gives the answer. And then Nicole, who's the manager, who's the leader, who's the parent, whatever, says, I think you're exactly right. You see, almost every conversation like this where there's conflict or problem ends with the phrase, you're right. The question is, who's the one saying it?
Oh,
that's the difference between the transformative communicators, right? Because
so true.
If I am doing my job as the leader, I have gotten to the end and I'm saying to that team member, you're right.
Yes.
That's exactly what you need to do. That's what I would have suggested.
Okay, so here's my question for you. How do you get better at asking the right questions? Because I've been in situations like this as a leader where I will, they'll come to me and say, hey, Nicole, I got this client and geez, I'm not sure how to respond in this situation. And I'll say, well, what do you think you should do? And I don't think I'm not asking good enough question. I'm not asking the right question back to them because I know I'm not, because they come back and they say, I just don't know. I don't know what to do.
Okay. I'm so glad you said that one. Let me give you the question that will completely change your entire life. And if you're listening to this right now, and let's say you haven't gotten any value from this conversation so far, but for some reason you've hung in there with me and listened to my story.
If you haven't, you're crazy.
Right. So here is the question. If you learn to do this, it will so change your life. And that is this. Once you become aware to ask questions, oftentimes the better you get at questions, naturally the person will initially say, I don't know. I have no idea. I expect that answer. I expect it. And I come right back with the same question every time, which sounds something like this. But if you had to say what you would do, what would it be? If you had to make a choice, what would it be?
I love that.
If you had to make a suggestion, what would it be? Right? So you're talking to your team member. Team member says, I got this huge problem. You're like, all right. I want to help you out. I do. My sense is we can figure this out. I need to ask you a few questions. Will you answer them honestly? Yes. Okay, good. All right. So if you were the manager right now, I'm just being hypothetical. If you were the manager right now and you had to say what your first move should be, what would it be? The person's going to say, gosh, I just don't know. And I don't even hear that because I know I'm coming right back. I know you don't know, and that's okay. But if you had to choose your first move, if you had to choose one, got to be specific here, what would it be? Just like if you say to your kids, where do you want to eat tonight? Oh, I don't know, wherever. Yeah, but if you had to choose one place to eat, what would it be? Go on a date night, right? Where do you want to go tonight? I don't know. But if you had to choose just one place, what would it be? Got to choose one, right? And now all of a sudden, you're getting specific answers.
Yeah. And
That's
so
the
good
key.
for them because it goes back to that self-discovery. And
that's where you get the light bulb. That's where you get the light bulb. Because here's the truth, Nicole. 90% of the time, the person that you are counseling, that you're helping, they actually already know what they should do.
Yep.
They just haven't found it yet. Therein lies the Pathfinder. The Pathfinder helps them discover the pathway to get to the answer because you ask the perfect question or set of questions.
Love it. So what are some examples of common I love this Vanguard. This is cool.
Yes.
What are some examples of common Vanguards that you see over and over again?
So this would be for any, particular, let me give you some marketing ones and let me give you some sales ones. Okay.
Cool. Yeah.
So from a marketing perspective, let's say you're doing a versus piece of content where you're doing a comparison maybe of your product versus another product, your brand versus another brand, your method versus another method, which by the way are incredibly effective and they work very, very well. You should read about them and they ask you answer. It's one of the big 5 versus comparison. So if I'm going to do that, first you got to say, okay, what are the mental exit doors in their mind? In other words, what upon reading this or watching this are they going to immediately doubt? So if someone knows that you sell a product and you're comparing your product to another product, they're expecting you to be biased.
Yep.
So to vanguard this, I got to get in front of it. I got to do it early.
Yep.
So let's say I was comparing fiberglass and concrete pools. Simplest one out there, right? Easy one. So I might say something like this. Let's pretend this is a video or an article. It's the same style, same sound. One of the questions we get here all the time at River Pools is, Marcus, be honest. By the way, just me saying be honest, that was a Vanguard, by the way. Marcus, be honest. Why should I choose fiberglass over concrete? Well, the truth is, you shouldn't always choose fiberglass over concrete. In fact, there are times when concrete is the better option. And so what this article is going to do, it's going to explain to you the pros and the cons of both types of pools. And then hopefully by the end, you'll have a clear sense as to which is the best choice for you. Now, as soon as somebody reads that, they're like, I love this guy. I love this guy. Because most brands don't speak like that.
Right.
The Vanguard was me coming right out and saying, you might not actually, maybe you shouldn't get a fiberglass pool.
Right.
That started. And then I said, there are times when concrete's better. That's another Vanguard. Like I'm driving home these signals that are saying he's unbiased. Okay.
Yeah, I see what you mean. It's like taking their objections.
So let's do a sales call for a second. Sales call. And anybody that's ever done any Sandler training, they'll know they have like one of the most famous Sandler Vanguards is start at the beginning of the sales call. You say, now, before we get started, can we agree that if at any point you feel like this isn't a fit, that you will let me know. And at the same time, if I feel like we can't be a fit for you, I'll let you know also. So can we agree to that before we get started? So that's your first verbal contract, right? Right? That's a Vanguard. That's all it is. It's a Vanguard. And you're getting in front of it. And by doing that, you're releasing the tension in the room.
Yep.
You're releasing the tension. So there's all these beautiful, beautiful Vanguards that we can use. And you once you become very, very aware of these mental exit doors that people have in their mind, you start to see them before they see them. And so then you're always thinking about, okay, what are the Vanguards I need to create in order to make this work, to make this effective. There's other Vanguards, though, that are nonverbal. Let me just share this with you really quick. So like as a speaker, I'm obsessed with environment because I know my environment is going to dramatically affect the feeling, the energy of the room. And so let's say we're going to meet as a team in the boardroom, right? So one potential vanguard is if there's 6 people that are going to be in this meeting and there's 10 chairs in the room, I'm going to take 4 chairs out, right? Because we don't want any space between the people. We want them tight, right? So this is no different than another example of it in the sales world is you have a dramatically higher closing rate for those that do in-home sales. There's a dramatically higher closing rate if you do the presentation in the kitchen than if you do it in the living room. The reason for that is because you're closer in proximity at the kitchen table. Your posture is more leaning in versus leaning back. And what that does, it creates an energy and a focus that ends up increasing closing rates. And so you should never be trying to sell on a couch, looking, at the prospect on a couch. Closing rates go down. See, these are just very, very simple, vanguards of the environment. And there's many, many others. I could talk about vanguards all day.
Man, it's incredible to think about. Like, if you really like what you're doing is it's like true empathy. You're really putting yourself in the shoes of whoever the buyer is and really living in that space. What do you think it is that keeps people from knowing or addressing those vanguards? You know what I mean?
I don't think really most people are obsessed with the way buyers or customers or audience members or coworkers or friends think. And that's the difference. You said a good word there, empathy. It's the ability to put yourself in the shoes of the group, person, individual you're talking to. And so, we're usually so caught up in, what we're going to say next, what we need to do. That's why I don't believe, especially with sales teams, I don't believe in scripts at all. I don't like them. What we teach is very principle-centered communication, because there's always another scenario that could come your way that you could learn. And so there's a million scenarios. You're never going to learn enough scripts. You just have to learn the fundamental principles. And if you learn the principles, it doesn't matter what comes your way. You can handle the moment, right? You can always handle it. And so, we've just talked about 2 of the pillars of this framework. One being question first, one being vanguards. And so the book next year we'll talk about all 4 of these transformative communication pillars. So I think this book, Nicole, I think it'll be something I'm speaking about for at least 20 years.
Very cool. I have no doubt. It transcends industries, it transcends business. It's relevant, and it's just so relevant in all of our lives. And communication is something that no matter where you're at, like you said, with your family relationships and business, it's the difference between really living that life of eudaimonia versus constantly being in conflict all the time and struggling and all of that. So I'm excited. Can't wait to read it. It's going to be beautiful. Man.
Thank you.
Marcus Sheridan, more wise words. We are like, I can't believe it. I feel like an hour's almost gone by, and this has been so great.
I sidetracked you. Sorry if I did. But,
No, it was a beautiful sidetrack, because actually I was coming into this. I was like, I want to know what's next for Marcus. What's next? And
you have totally heard what's next.
Yes, and I love it.
You've definitely heard what's next. I want to produce something that's more than a book. I want to produce a work. A work, something that will outlive me, that that people will continue to use for decades. And not just a decade. I've been really blessed with the Ask You Answer, because it has been the definitive content framework to follow online for 10 years. It really has been. And it's going to continue to be that for a season. I am going to do a 3rd edition of the book, because AI is such a big deal that I have to do a Ask You Answer.
Yep.
With a major AI component to it. So that 3rd edition will come out probably sometime next year as well. So probably 2 books next year. But gosh, I mean, just AI alone is just it's a crazy
It
crazy
is.
conversation to have.
Yeah.
And it's anybody that says it's overhyped is naive. Is hasn't used it well, and certainly isn't really paying attention. We could hype it every single minute for the next 10 years, and we're still going to undersell its impact on the world. Now, I don't know if that impact is going to be a net positive, negative,
Oh, yeah.
and it's going to be what it is. It's going to be a mix of both. Just like the internet has been a very high mix of negative and positive impact on the world. I mean, but these are fascinating times, right? And I think it's important to, in this case, to be in the sandbox.
Yep.
Especially as business owners, it's our fiduciary to our customers, to our team, to say, are there better ways? Right?
Yes.
Are there better ways?
Absolutely.
And one thing I really have learned in business, Nicole, is like never allow personal opinions to get in the way of smart business decisions.
That's wise. Yeah.
And it's easy to do. It's like, well, I don't really like Facebook. I don't like video. It's like, yeah, but the marketplace just doesn't care what you like. They don't care. And there's a lot of people who have really held back their success because they're like, that's just not my thing. I don't like to do that. It's like, I don't have a face for the camera. Like, this stuff that we say. I've done it before too. I made a big mistake when I have fallen in love with short style vertical video. It's so effective. So crazy effective. But 4 years ago, I could have done that on TikTok and I could have gotten crushed it. But I'm like, TikTok, addictive. I see it. I don't want to be on that tool. China, don't like it. I'm out. I probably should have danced with the devil a little bit. I mean, just because
interesting.
Because the reality is,
oh my gosh, that's
it's
funny.
happening.
Yeah,
right? It's happening. And
I'm with you on TikTok though. I can't.
Yeah, it's
so
I
hard.
don't like my kids aren't on the platform. I don't personally use it.
Yeah.
But does it mean that I shoot myself in the foot in terms of an opportunity standpoint? At least I could have been one of the ones that are putting positive content on there. Right?
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Like bring some light to the darkness. but
yes.
Right. So
but I always wonder, are they going to ban it? Like what's going to happen?
I know.
Right?
These are it's like you want to buy the land before the value explodes.
It's like they ask you answer. I mean, it worked. It's so great, and now there's just like this proliferation of content. Like
it's
reality.
harder, right? It's harder, especially from an SEO search standpoint.
Yeah, and especially now with Google's new SGE experience pushing down organic search potential, it's just getting more cluttered. And unfortunately, like we leverage AI in our business every day, all day. I just had a conversation with a lean ops guy and I'm like, how can we make our ops more like, what can we do? How can we leverage AI to just increase automation and make things, you have to, but man, it's just like finding that balance, right?
That's right.
Like it's just really being able to find that balance. So how are you leveraging AI on your businesses? Like, what are you doing?
I personally, I love ChatGPT.
Yeah.
I like it for like there's been a few times when I was stuck with saying something and I needed to maybe it was a paragraph that wasn't making sense and I asked for some help and it gave me some prompts. I love it for suggesting titles for articles or videos. Really big fan for that. But, of course, now I'm starting to use it because they opened up their API with, lots of different tools. And it's stunning what it can do. But I'm consistently using it, and I don't create whole swaths of content with it yet. But I'm also not going to be one that says I'm never going to do that. Because I think everybody's going to do that. I think we just have to, it's just a matter of learning, proper prompts, and everything is prompt engineering when it comes to AI. And so I'm using it every single day and loving it, and it really, really helps me with my creativity, helps me say it better. And that's the most common is I'll take a sentence that I don't like. I don't know how you do this, Nicole, but I'll write something, and when I'm done, I'm going to read it. And if I slow down at a section, like if it just sticks funny, I'm like, doesn't sound right. And so I might play with it and try to fix it. I'm like, it still doesn't sound right. So I'll just go to ChatGPT. I'll put the sentence in that I wrote, and I said, can you say this 10 different ways better?
I
And all
know.
of a
It's
sudden I'm
so
like,
great.
that's
Yeah.
the way it's supposed to look.
Love
right?
it.
So say
Mhm.
this better is probably my most common prompt, if you will.
I love that too. And I do the same thing. Like, give me 4 different versions of this,
Yeah.
podcast, outro, or whatever the case may be. The one place though I struggle with using ChatGPT is on LinkedIn posts. That's one where I just can't get myself like I feel like I have to write it. Because there's a thing about writing, Marks. I don't have. I'm curious to hear your perspective on this. Is the process of writing for me is learning. It's just
Mhm.
I love the process of it, and so there's this part of me that's like I don't want to give that to a ChatGPT. I want to be able to experience that process because it's how I learn, grow, come up with new insights and all of that. So how do you balance that aspect of it?
Yeah, I agree with you. I've not used it to produce a post yet.
Yeah.
I've used it for I've played with it because I wanted to see what it would do.
Yeah.
I've also, at times, if I wanted to come up with something that was a list style post, I would go to ChatGPT and
Yep.
say, hey, come up with a list for such and such to see if my mind was thinking like what they were thinking.
Yeah.
But to your point, it is a quick way to lose trust if your audience can tell that it was
Mhm.
ChatGPT or AI produced. I've got a few people that comment on my stuff because I get a decent amount of comments on LinkedIn that I know are AI. I don't comment back. I don't like it. I'm just like,
How do you know? How
oh,
can
you
you
can
tell?
you can
You can
tell.
tell.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you can just tell. It's just there's a
Like
particular
great
style.
post or
No,
yeah.
no.
Not even that.
No, with ChatGPT, what it will do, or with AI, what it will do, it will, in many ways, restate what you just said in a less soulful way, but a very thorough way, right? And so it's usually like, the longer comments are AI produced comments.
Interesting. I'm gonna have to pay attention to that. I don't get as many comments as you, so I don't have as much, much to go on.
Yeah, it'll happen eventually. You'll start to see it.
That's amazing. Yeah, no, but it's going to be really interesting to see.
I got an AI produced personalized video yesterday. So it was funny.
Huh.
I'm not going to say any names, but the person that sent it, I could tell it was they sent it out to a list. And within the video, they actually they verbalized to me, to Marcus, but I know the person. And they wouldn't have said that. So I think they didn't know I was on their list.
Yeah.
And so they just created an AI video that goes out to all these people, addresses them by name, and then the person acts like we have no history and like we know each other pretty decently. I'm like,
That's a bad use of it, right? Like, I think it's great for repurposing existing content. It's great for like if I'm planning a trip to Yellowstone Glacier this year. Give me a 4-day itinerary for a family of 4 to Glacier National Park. Beautiful. I get a lot of great ideas, But like to your point, like that is just taken to the extreme. How do you think, and I know we're like coming up on time, Marcus. Oh man, I could just keep talking to you, but I want to be very respectful of your time because I know you're very busy. So how about this? I'm going to ask you one more question and then we're going to do a lightning round. Is that okay?
That's fine.
Yeah. Is that good? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So my question is, how do you see they ask you answer changing in light of AI going forward? What is your prediction?
Well, I think people are still obsessed with getting the best, most specific, relevant answer to the question as quickly as possible. Yeah. I think there will be less usage of Google with time, but you have to keep in mind that people are still going to be vetting you on your website. Yep. So let's say they get their initial info through ChatGPT or AI. Let's just call it AI. Then once they let's say, okay, I want to make a decision. I need to vet these companies. That's when they're coming to your site. Yep. And the same psychological principles are going to be needed at that time. And so you're going to want to have all their questions, worries, fears, concerns addressed. You're going to want to allow them to move through the buyer's journey at their speed and their style, very, choose your own adventure, right?
Yeah.
That's going to continue to very, very much be the case. The one thing that's very exciting to me, though, is the companies that have done the Ask You Answer well, that have really leaned into great content, answering their customers' questions. Now, because some of these new tools that you can use, the greatest chatbot experience ever is just awaiting you, right? Because you can, like, say,
You can build it into your
hypothetically,
website.
you put a chatbot now on the River Pool site. It can take all the content that we've ever produced, and it can, somebody can ask a question to the chatbot about pools. It's going to give an answer, but now it's from our content, and it's very specific to them. And so instead of them having to find what page of the site, they're able to get our information given to them real time, and I don't have to hire anybody to do that, which is a big deal because I can't keep up with it because I get 1 million visitors a month during the summer, right?
Yeah.
So that's an example of what I'm very, very, excited about in terms of those that have been doing the Ask You Answer. They're going to be crushing it from a chat experience on your website.
You're so right. And no matter what, I think marketing just continues to get more complex over time, obviously. And so having that home base, your website is always going to be your home base. It's, you own it. There's always going to be a need for it. It's just now there's just so many more channels. It's a lot more, but you're absolutely right. Having that home base be solid and strong. And that's super cool, that AI opportunity to be able to have that built into your website that way. That's massive. I've heard, I think there's a lot of companies that have started to do that, wasn't it? I think Bloomberg is one of them that's doing that. So there's a ton. That's pretty cool. Man, I can't wait to see what happens. I can't wait for your book, Marcus Sheridan. It's going to be amazing.
Thank you. The nice thing is AI is not going to replace the need for us to have very important conversations, right? Transformative conversations.
And that's
one thing that's interesting to me, though, is like, here's where it gets freaky. And I know we're going to have lightning round here, but where it gets really freaky is, and we could go down a lot of rabbit holes here, but like, I know speaker friends right now that are working on developing apps through AI, that AI reviews all their content that they've ever produced, and then you can ask that speaker's app a question, and in their voice, even potentially as a video, they will answer that specific question based on their, years worth of producing content.
Wow, man.
That's pretty crazy.
That is crazy. I think I heard Tom Hanks say something similar, like he could basically live on in perpetuity with AI.
Yeah, you can live on that, which is really scary, because then you start to look at some of the moral components to this. Like, what if you lost a child, right? And, then you want to continue to have conversations with that child, or a loved one in general. That's very, very heavy, right? It's very, very heavy. It's all going to happen, within the next, decade, max 2. We're going to be see things that we can't even imagine. Obviously, it's very slippery, and I don't know how I feel about it. But again, I think it's important that we look at it without emotion. Analytically, we need to be able to look at these things and detach. And then you can also put on your emotions hat after you have looked at it analytically. But first, you need to start with the analyticals. Otherwise, it could cost you.
That is really good advice. But yeah, I think it's just like any massive technology that's disrupted and hit, like the atomic energy, for example, or cell phones. All of those things, they have their pluses and they have their minuses, and it's just that's the nature of the beast. So yeah, you're absolutely right. It's going to be interesting to see.
Yeah.
Oh man, Marcus, this has been so fun. Oh my gosh, I want to talk to you again someday.
We can make that happen. I'm sure we can.
That'd be awesome. Okay. So I did crowdsource some of these questions from my team, because they're like, they're like massive. They're like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to hear the episode. So anyway, I was like, what questions do you want to ask Marcus? And I'll ask them. So here's our lightning round. Okay.
All right.
Okay. I think that I know the answer to the first one. What's one subject you'd like to learn more about right now?
Definitely AI. And it feels completely, even though I'm in it, I study an hour a day, I feel like I need to study 3 just to somewhat keep up. So That would be one. And like I've always struggled a lot with accounting. I wish I
Oh,
had taken accounting, because I own multiple businesses, and that's
yeah.
always been my Achilles heel, is really, really understanding all the ins and outs of financials and
Mhm.
accounting. And, so I've made mistakes there in the past just because out of ignorance.
Yeah.
At my swimming pool company and like my third year in business, I had a big embezzlement.
Oh
And that
my
was
gosh.
because I I didn't know better. I was ignorant, and so I've gotten better, but it's still an area where you know it's been a struggle for me. It's also probably why I was good in math until letters were introduced, and as soon as letters,
Interesting. Yeah.
int- combined with numbers like algebra, I was done. I couldn't do it anymore. Brain
Oh,
didn't brain didn't understand it.
yeah. It's so funny you say that. I've been thinking I want to take an accounting class too. When I went to college, it was like the last thing I wanted to do was
Yeah,
accounting. I
yeah,
was like, let's talk. I want to be the people person. I want to understand human behavior. That was my jam. But now that I own a business myself, I'm
yeah.
like,
You have
I
to think about
really
it.
need to understand this stuff much better because,
Yeah,
you know, you can trust, but at the end of the day, it's your business. You got to know
yeah.
what's going on.
Plus, our
So
tax code sucks.
yes, that's so
Yeah.
true. Asked my
Flat tax,
tax bill
please.
last
Yeah.
month, like, what? Come on. Why can't, like, what's wrong with having a profitable business? It's like, come on, geez, you got to, oh man, I need to
Yeah,
get
we
better
could
at
go on
this.
all day about that one, right?
Come on. Jeez, Uncle Sam. Okay, this lightning round is not being so lightning. Okay, if you were a spy, what would your code name be?
Oh, if I was a spy, my code name be
I'll tell you, my teammate said it should be double O content.
Double O content. That's really, really funny. I think it would probably be like Aslan. So
Aslan.
yeah,
Okay.
I know it's lightning, but I'm going to screw it up again. I had a reading disability when I was younger.
Mm.
First real book I ever read was Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
Oh, yeah.
And so I had this like connection with lions early on,
Hmm.
and I had a few other experiences that were with lions, and that's why my first company outside of Riverpools was called the Sales Lion,
Oh,
and
yeah.
that's
Okay.
so
Cool.
there's this
Hmm.
whole connection with lions. So I think it could probably be something like Aslan or something.
Oh, he was great. I loved him. Man,
Yeah.
what amazing. Okay. So that's actually one of our questions. What's your favorite book?
Well, I would say that my favorite book of all time is probably How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Oh, it's a great one. Yeah.
Good to Great would be my favorite modern business book. I just think that's a game changer.
Mm-hmm. Good old
Um,
hedgehog concept.
yeah. Oh gosh, I never get enough
Yeah.
of that. So yeah,
Cool.
I think those are the two.
Okay. If you had to guess, what's one thing people would say they appreciate most about you?
I would say that I make them better.
I can second that. That's cool. Very cool. Man. Ah. Okay. Thoughts on AI and content marketing in one word.
I'm trying to think of one word, right? So that's the hard part of this question. It's one
My
word.
goal was to stump you, Marcus. That was my goal today. I
Right.
wanted to stump you with a question. So
Um, awareness.
awareness.
In other words,
Very
don't be
cool.
aloof.
Very cool. Okay. Most underrated sales or marketing market metric people should be paying more attention to.
I still think it's average page views on website per
Ooh,
customer versus per lead versus per visitor.
that is
Those
good.
three. So average page views of
Yeah.
just a visitor, average page views of a lead, and average page views of a customer. It creates this incredible step effect where you start
Interesting.
to
Yeah.
see what is um, the the tipping
The magic
point.
bullet.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
the tipping point of content consumption, because once you realize it's a certain number that your average customer versus your lead does, you say, what do we have to do to get them that number? it gets very exciting at that point.
Very cool. Okay. And this next one, I know the topic for your next book. Do you have a business coach?
I'm working on that. I do not. Well, okay. River Pools has one. Yes. We have had one at Impact before. I personally don't have one.
Interesting.
And I don't like that I don't have one.
Huh.
And I do need one. And I believe everybody needs a coach.
Huh. Interesting. Okay. My last question. And then you're free. Who is your hero?
Well, definitely the Savior. I mean, that one's, he is his sacrifice, and what we call his atonement. He is the model of, to me, of righteousness and of goodness. Also, when I was in Chile for a couple of years on my church mission, I had a person called a mission president, and he was the most godlike man I've ever met. And my grandfather also, who almost became a priest in the Catholic Church, but he didn't. Lucky for me, because I became eventually his posterity. He was one of the most godlike men I've ever met too. So probably those three right there.
Beautiful answers. And what I think, really beautiful way to end our episode. So, man, what an honor. Marcus, thank you so much. This has been such a pleasure. I've learned so much from our conversation. And I know that our listeners are going to they're going to be so excited by the time they finish to be able to read your book when it comes out. So, man, this is so great. So
pleasure is all mine. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Marcus. This has been so phenomenal. I'm getting all verklempt over here. Dreams coming true. Okay. As we wrap up this episode of Tales of Misadventure, we're reminded that with entrepreneurship, there's no straight path to success. It's the unexpected twists and turns that shape our stories and make them worth telling. So embrace the misadventures in your own life and let them guide you towards your own blessings. Thank you for tuning in. We'll be back soon with more captivating tales of misadventure.
Tales of Misadventure is produced, edited, and moderated by Julie Basello with Basello Media. Music by Marcus Way. Special thanks to our amazing guests and the entire DMG Digital team. Visit us at dmgdigital.io to get access to all our podcast interviews and other helpful resources. And if you'd like to get updates on the latest and greatest, please sign up for our email newsletter. We'll see you next time for another episode of Tales of Misadventure. Until then, keep falling forward.